Welcome to the Small Business Breakthrough Series, where every week we're interviewing small business guests that support small business guests or small businesses. Have you ever been so engulfed in a book or a movie that the hours just zip by like they're minutes? That's because of the power of storytelling. Today, we have a guest who has created her whole business around helping people tell better stories. And what do better stories get for small business owners? More customers. I want to welcome Amanda Johnson, co founder, CEO of Saved by Story Publishing, also known as the Story Oracle. Welcome, Amanda, to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to talk to someone else who loves the stories.
Yes. My wife and I are both fans of story, and she was reading one recently, actually, that was she went, I'm only going to read for 30 more minutes. And then about 2.5 hours later, she went, uh-oh, I got to go to bed. So uh, that's the power of a story that we talk about. Amanda, give us a quick intro. What was kind of the passion and inspiration for getting into starting your business and helping people with story?
Well, originally I was planning on being a journalist. So I already loved stories. I was going to tell stories that way. And then I got into a classic books program at the university. And that's when I really started to find the power of story. These stories, Homer and the Iliad and the Odyssey, right? These stories built our civilization. They shaped ideas, they shaped philosophies, they shaped civilizations. And so I started to realize that story was important, but so was context, so was history. So I pivoted before I knew what that word meant. It's such a business word, right? And I decided to become a history teacher because I wanted to teach young people how to work through great stories and really think through the history of them and author intention and all of that. Got into the education system and quickly realized that my personal story, all the stuff that happened or very early on in my life was catching up with me. It was affecting me emotionally and physically. And it was just too hard to give the kids who were in the toughest neighborhood dealing with the toughest circumstances what they needed and then get home and be a decent human for my 3-year-old at the time. So I left education brokenhearted because I really did want to make a difference. And I just had this opportunity to start helping individuals learn how to write well online. I could do it while my kid was sleeping. It was this perfect little thing. But then when we went to shop this program, we went to the wrong audience. So many entrepreneurial lessons learned before I became an entrepreneur. Know your market. But it was actually a little bit of synchronicity that was happening. I found a group of entrepreneurs who said, I don't really want you to teach me how to write well. I need you to fix what I have been writing, brochures, websites, flyers, and oh, my manuscript. I can't get this thing done. Can you tell me why? And so, I had been a creative writer in my youth, and then all of the, as my history teacher would have said, the fluff got kicked out of me in college, right? It became very technical where the stories were the foundation of what I was wrestling with, but the ideas and the persuasion was all very technical. And so I started to look at this and I thought it was going to be just about organization. But I reorganized the concepts and it still just wasn't working. It wasn't engaging. But wasn't what was engaging to me was hearing the stories of the entrepreneurs. So I started to figure out we need to figure out ways to include your story in this content to really bring the reader in. And eventually, they started to do this while they were on stages and it started to become the realization it was before story was a trend. It was before everyone was talking about it. And so they started to realize, wow, I do need to tell my story. But then of course they realized there were parts of their story they weren't really excited to tell. They didn't really want to go back there and write it, especially in a deeply engaging way, because they had to touch all of those feels. And so my first business became about, helping them to figure out how to write powerful stories, but also face the stories that were keeping them from writing. So it was kind of a partner in the writing, partner in the transformation.
Yeah, let's dive a little bit into that. So I
Yeah.
was listening to a conversation where somebody was doing a similar thing. I was getting ready to tell. He was great on stage and was getting ready to update his the speech, and he's going through a little bit of a story up. Um, what's the word? Going through some story input, I guess.
Mhm.
How then that input was not good. So he kind of unleashed this new story on stage, and his mentor said, pulled him aside after his presentation and was like, "Don't ever say do that again. Like I don't want to feel like that ever again." So
Mm.
this is a powerful story, but
Yep.
it needs to pivot. And the with that, like that's that whole touching the feelings.
Mhm.
This presenter just unleashed to the crowd this deep dark past that he had. How do you work through with people to help them reposition those stories so that they can now make it more of a positive impact than leave everybody in that like drought? Like there's a bad like nobody wants to reread the story that leaves them in peril.
Yeah. I have been in those rooms. I have watched individuals tell their stories for the first time, and what ends up happening usually is people get up and leave, but the caregivers in the room stand and they lean in. So they're supposed to be there listening, being empowered, being educated, and they end up supporting this human who is obviously still dealing with this particular story and this old pain. And so I never really shy away from the stories that need to be told in the sense of, well, I don't think you should tell that story. What I think is happening when those situations happen is that it's a first time. Some of my early story mentors used to tell me, like, I know that there's this fresh thing that's going on. It's coming up for you right now. And you feel like it's really powerful and it would move the room, but you haven't fully processed it yet. And there's something about the writing experience that really allows people to go back there and process emotion. Because if you think about it, deep, dark past, a tragic accident, or a traumatic childhood, let's say, and you have these moments, usually when you're in those moments, you go into a flight or fight state, right? And those are not processing states. It's the rest and digest that sometimes we never get to. And so we never process the fear or the rage or the sadness. And so it just piles up and it gets lodged in these, remote parts of our psyche and in the body. And then if we don't go back in there and bring it into the light and feel it again, then it tends to show up in the writing or it tends to show up in the speaking. And I've seen it over and over again. Oh, actually I have a really great story about this. One of my clients had a horrendous time with mentors growing up. I mean, super traumatic childhood. And then like every human mentor that he dealt with was just awful and abusive. And he was saying these things about these mentors that were cracking me up in the back, but I could really feel the shadow with it. And so he was writing through it and he was having all of these incredible enlightening experiences. And so the writing was smoothing out, right? All of that energy was kind of getting processed out as he went back and felt through. And then there was this one mentor that he was still so angry at. So he's doing all of this processing and kind of maybe forgiveness work through the process. And then he gets to this one mentor. And I remember it was like I flipped the page essentially in the document, and it was like getting blown over with rage. And it wasn't exactly even the words that he had written because, I was thinking maybe we could soften this up. Maybe if we adjusted the way that you said this. And so we did all of that and it still felt so awful. And so I told him, I think there's some work that you need to do around this before you can talk about this. And he said, I don't think there is. So what I did was I said, I think this is going to interrupt the reader's experience because it interrupted mine. Let me put this in front of a few people. I gave them no inputs. Like, I didn't warn them or anything. I just said, "Let me know what your experience is. What do you love? What do you hate?" Every single one of them pointed to that page. Something happened here. I don't know what it was, but I literally closed the book and I couldn't read anymore. Similar to what happened to your friend on stage, right? It's this moment where something is not processed. So I gave him a few tools and I sent him on his way to do the internal work because I was like, you can't publish it like this. People are going to close the book before they get to the happy end. And so he did. He took a few months and he really did a lot of deep transformational spiritual work around it. And we did not even change one word. Sent it back to those people, it was gone. The energy of it was coming from him, not the words on the page. And I thought, wow, if that's not evidence that we need the time to really wrestle through those emotions and fully process them before we bring them to the world, I don't know what is.
That is such a powerful response like that. I mean, to not even change a word and to still be able to go back and reread and understand it, which comes back to the power. Let's be real. You didn't start your business to feel stuck, overwhelmed, or bored out of your mind. But yet, here you are, spinning, stalled, or just chasing every shiny object just to stay motivated. And I know exactly how you feel because I used to do the same thing. But that's why I built the Momentum community for founders like you. It's for people who are ready to get serious, simplify, and build a business that actually moves forward. It uses peer accountability, and it's what I used to be able to grow my business successfully and have a great exit. Does this sound like something you need? Click the link in the description below and let's have a conversation. Enjoy the rest of the show. Can you talk to what is the power of a business owner knowing the story or being able to tell their story to their customers so their customers can feel how passionate they are about the project, about their business, how passionate about they are about serving the customer?
Yeah.
What's the importance there? What can you tie something together with that?
I think it really boils down to the why. You know, we entrepreneurs are kind of a crazy bunch, right? We have this vision. We want to change the world. We form an idea, a product or a service, and we start to deliver it. And usually, if we're not surrounded by a bunch of entrepreneurs, we deal with a lot of pushback. Like, what in the world are you thinking? And what I found, I haven't dealt with a lot of individuals in the product space, those types of businesses, but every single messenger I've met, anyone who wants to be a speaker or a coach or an author, the question is always boiling down to why. Why do you care so much about this? And that's when their faces usually go sheet white, because all of a sudden they're confronted with their story. They're really excited about this solution that they found, or this paradigm changing solution or belief that they just want to happily install into all of the people who read their books and sit in their audiences. And yet, no one really cares about the paradigm shift until they understand the paradigm that you came from and the one that they're probably still in, that maybe they've numbed themselves to all of its icky, oppressive, ways that it's undermining them and their intentions. We kind of sit in a place where we're doing the best that we can and we're moving through life in an automatic fashion. And the story is the way to help individuals really connect with the truth, right? Right now, they show up, they're professionals. This happens all the time. They show up and they're these, high achieving, overperforming individuals step into my retreat. They are dressed up and I'm cozied up. We do this like Airbnb style because we're basically going to be living together for a few days. And you can immediately see them starting to stress about, like, this is a different environment. My persona isn't going to work here. And then the stories begin and they start to get connected to all of those feelings that are related to all of those things that they're not really giving a lot of time and attention to. And so, you either break frame in space and you adjust things so that people have to sort of feel where they're really at, or you tell a story. And if you tell it powerfully enough, they say, yep, that's exactly where I'm at. That's the stuff going on between my ears. That's the pressure I'm feeling in my chest, right? And they can really connect and understand why you're doing what you're doing. And then, you know, from there, it's just building raving fans because now they really know that you came from where they're at. They really know it because you've told the story powerfully.
That is it just brings up the such big importance on
Mhm.
when you want to get up in front of people or when you want to get in your business, how much you care actually matters. And if you
Yeah.
don't, well, the customers aren't going to care either, and they're probably
Mhm.
going to care to use somebody else.
Mhm.
So the but with the power of it and showing that you can care and doing that kind of work, now you can start to bring energy, positive energy through to having more people show up, more
Yeah.
people engage with it, and really create that interaction. It's very, very powerful stuff.
Yeah.
What's a recent project that you've worked on that um, has reminded you why you got into the business in the first place?
Hmm. Oh, that's a good question. Recent. Well, can I share 2? Do we have a moment? The first one is one of these that will be like one of my career highlights because it was the first time that I worked on fiction from the beginning. And so, for 10 years or so, I was helping individuals write their personal stories, whether it was in a how-to or straight memoir or for professional development, but still, inserting their story into that. And so someone said, I really want to do this. She was a social worker working in high conflict divorce custody evaluations. So she's the person who deals with the parents who are in the worst distress ever. And she has to sort out who those kids get to hang out with most of the time. Like, that's a tough job. That's someone who really cares about their job because it is brutal. And so, she said, I could give them a checklist and like this dry book, but I really want to, I've seen some things like parents do some incredibly insane things in this process. And I think it would be more valuable for them to learn through story than for them to, check things off the list of how to win at custody. And so I said, great. I've never done fiction from the beginning before. So with that said, if you're comfortable with that, we'll just figure it out together. Comes to the first retreat and safe space, we're talking about other things, what's going on in your life, blah, 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 where the stories start to come up. And she blurts this thing out. And I think, oh my gosh. And I could just watch her. When you see someone trying to collapse into themselves and slide out of the room, get invisibility. And and so I made a note. It was a personal thing going on. She felt completely unrelated to the book. And then as she started moving through this process of writing, and then I started to hear this human coming up over and over again and all the reasons why she wasn't able to get to the writing, I thought, I think you might be writing your own story. No, 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 no. Like, so I'm the oracle, right? I can't really deliver this is the truth of the matter, even though I can kind of see it kind of clearly, I'm pretty sure. And so, all of these things masterfully happened in her world. And when I say masterfully, it was from the outside looking in, seeing how everything was being orchestrated for her to slowly develop enough safety to see what was really going on in her life and then be able to confront it. And that story, she wrote the book and then she saw that she had lived the book and she made a decision to completely change the generational narrative. She found out later that this was something that had been going on in her family for quite a while, and her kids could have just slid right into those roles and those character and storylines if she had not seen the truth of what was happening through the writing process and then said, okay, I'm ready to change it. I'm going to end this generational narrative right now. That's to me, if you say, like Hallmark career story, that's the reason why I'm here.
That's very powerful, very, very powerful to know that that's how the things you help people through.
Yeah.
Um, Looking into the future,
Mhm.
story is has become very simple for a lot of people. But I'm really curious to what your take is on how AI is affecting this because there is not that emotion that's inside of it. You can tell AI to write a story and give you I
Mhm.
mean, I can write a book in 90 seconds just about,
Right.
with the right prompts, but that's not a real story. It doesn't have real passion. It doesn't have come from any of these human elements that you're talking or even as you're talking, really spiritual,
Mhm.
extra external energy elements that you're talking
Yeah.
about. So where do you see the future of these stories going? Will there maintain separation?
I think there necessarily we have to maintain separation. Um, and I to your point, I don't think it's going to be too hard because, I just had someone come to me. She hired this ghostwriting company, and it was this very strange way that they set it up. And they didn't deliver any content to her for a long time, and they just kept getting a whole bunch of content out of her. And these were her words. I felt like they were my words, but I was missing. Like my essence, the reason I'm here on the planet wasn't communicated through a lot of the words that I used. So I read it and I'm like 99% sure that they just shoved all of her interviews into AI and had it write a book. That's insane because for all of these reasons. Number 1, her soul didn't get into it through the writing. Like I'm a big fan of partnering with individuals in the writing versus ghostwriting. Because if I ghostwrite something for you and then you end up on a stage without having fully processed that stuff, you're going to have a moment like your friend, right? Like I'm doing a disservice in the long run by giving you this shortcut that's not really a shortcut. You're going to have to deal with that eventually, and I'd rather you do it in the safety of a writing partnership and perhaps a community where you can really work it out than on stage in front of a bunch of people that you're trying to influence. Like it's just not a great thing. The other thing is that, as it happens with a lot of people who want to write, the inspiration is there. It's like, oh, I can write about all of these things. But what if you already have a business like she does with some very important systems and frameworks and ways of looking at the world and belief systems and values, and those don't become inputs in the AI. And here's the crazy thing is that most people who are masterful because they've got 10, 20, 40, sometimes 60 years of mastery in something before they sit down to write, they are not very good at saying, "Here are all the reasons I've been successful." They're not good at it because they've integrated so many of those things and they've made so many assumptions that it's not an easy path for them to really extricate what made them successful. No, it was the values. It was the way that you approach it. I had one client, one of my first clients, sales coach, powerful, dynamic human, could sell the ice to an Eskimo. I mean, she's just so good and did it with integrity. And, I'm looking at all of these principles that she's writing, and she's a step girl. Like she writes in steps. These are the steps that you need to take to be successful. And something was missing, but I didn't know what it was. And I had the opportunity to network with her one time, and I just sat back and watched. And there was this thing about her when she interacted with people for the first time, this way that she was connecting with them, this curiosity. And these were things that were so innate to her. And they were absolutely like, I would argue they were the reason why she was a successful business coach. Yeah, she had great systems and follow up and all the other stuff she put in there. But that superpower was the thing that made her great. And she was about to leave it out of the entire manuscript.
Wow. It has been an extremely powerful conversation. I know I've taken plenty of mental notes and Well, I get the spoil of getting to rewatch this lots before everybody else does. So for the listeners out there that are listening, I get to step up. That's the joys of podcasting, everybody, as you get to meet wonderful people like Amanda. Amanda has been such a great opportunity to have you on the podcast today. In tradition for the Small Business Breakthrough, we jump into a lightning round before we wrap things up. Are you ready?
I think I'm ready. Yeah. Let's do it.
The questions are simple. They're supposed to bring brevity, and they quick and easy. So the first one: coffee or tea?
Coffee. How is that even a question?
Uh, there are preferences,
Okay.
but coffee is a very clear winner. Like if I have to go back over,
That's
50 some or it's close to 70 episodes now. Yeah, coffee is a very clear winner. How
Mhm.
about cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Yeah, they're a clear winner also.
Mhm.
If you could grab only one weapon or item during a zombie apocalypse, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good one. Probably my walking stick over there. It'd be my first line of defense, I suppose.
There you go. That's the one where there's no clear answer and it stumps everybody.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What
Favorite
do I
quote?
wanna preserve? Do I wanna protect myself or do I wanna preserve something? That's where I went.
Yeah. How about a favorite quote or phrase that you think about often?
I heard one this week. All of all of humanity and civilization and philosophy boils down to 2 questions. Where have you been and where are you going?
That's a really good one. How about a book that has influenced your life the most?
The first one that changed my life was You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay.
You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay.
Mhm.
And the biggest obstacle that you have had to overcome and one lesson you learned from it.
That I was forever going to be my biggest obstacle. And I won't say that I've overcome it, but I've certainly developed a lot of tools and including using story to help me see what's really got me stuck and move through it.
Excellent, excellent. And if our listeners would like to reach out and learn more about the Story Oracle or to potentially work with you, how could they do that?
So the Story Oracle is thestoryoracle.com. You've got it there. And if they are interested in looking at what would it look like to write or publish with Saved by Story, that's savedbystory.house. And if you hit /foreshadows, you'll see a whole bunch of freebies over there that can help you take your next best step.
We'll have all of that information linked in the show notes for those that are listening or watching on YouTube. It'll be on the description. And reach out to Amanda. Learn that power of story and the feelings that you have to process. This is something new. I learned a ton in this episode, and I've done a bunch with story in the last 10 years and learned an amazing amount through this episode. So reach out to Amanda to learn more. Her information is in the show notes. If you found value and you want to listen to more Small Business Breakthrough podcast episodes, check out the playlist located right up here in the corner. And as always, till next time.